Good afternoon and welcome to our monthly webinar. My name is Yomika Bennett. I'm the Executive Director of the New York Charter Schools Association. I'm joined today by Anna Hall, CEO, Northeast Charter Schools Network, David Frank, Chief of Staff, Office of Education Policy, Susie Corrello, Executive Director of the SUNY Charter Schools Institute, Aaron Cochran, Deputy Executive Director for Policy and Operations at New York City DOE, and Corey Callahan, General Counsel and VP of Legal Policy at the New York City Charter School Center. Welcome back, everyone. We hope that you had a very nice holiday and appreciate you joining us for our final monthly webinar for 2021. As usual, today's webinar will open with a few updates, and we'll start with the indoor mask update. As many of you probably know, on Monday, I'm sure you know, Governor Hochul implemented a temporary statewide mask mandate. While schools are already under an indoor masking mandate, these new rules require both patrons and staff inside businesses and other public spaces for everyone to wear masks when they're in those venues, and if those venues do not require proof of vaccination. The mask mandate will be in effect from December 13th to January 15th, after which the state will reevaluate. The New York State Department of Health has issued updated guidance on testing and quarantine strategies that local health departments may adopt. It's important for schools to be aware of the decisions of their local health departments and allowing schools to adopt test to stay and test out of quarantine policies. Schools must continue to report all COVID-19 test results, including all the results of home testing, if your local health department permits it, to the New York State COVID-19 report card. Additionally, access to testing must be equitable for all students. Individual local health departments may choose to allow schools to adopt a test to stay policy, which allows the students to remain in school for academic programming, and that part is important, academic programming. And they can allow that after providing a negative test for each of the 7 days following exposure. Local health departments may also choose to adopt a test out of quarantine policy for schools under their jurisdiction. Under this policy, quarantine of an exposed, unvaccinated individual may end after 7 days following a negative test result and no display of symptoms. For all the guidance from New York State Department of Health, all explanation of that, and more information that you can read for yourself, we are providing a link in the chat. The association is proud to announce the launch of 2 new working groups for the 2022 calendar year. In addition to our data working group, we will be launching a working group for charter school board members and school-based operations leaders. The purpose of these working groups is to create a space for specific charter school personnel to share their experiences, discuss their challenges, and exchange best practices. Please be on the lookout for an email announcing the launch of these working groups very shortly, and an opportunity to RSVP for the first meeting in January. Please feel free to forward the email that you receive to those at your schools who might be interested in joining these groups. The association would like to share a unique opportunity for charter schools and networks to receive free financial and budgeting counseling support for the winter and spring. Our own Director of School Support, Michael Good, is a member of the teaching team for the Introduction to Education, Finance, and Budgeting course at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. The capstone project for this course provides teams of graduate student consultants who are available to provide analysis and support on a pressing financial or budgeting issue facing your organization. Past projects have included an evaluation of the fiscal impact of changing salary scales or the cost of implementation of new academic programs. Schools interested in hosting a consulting team can reach out with questions by emailing Mike Good at the email that he's going to drop in the chat, or complete the project submission form also being added to the chat. Project proposals should complete the project submission. Schools submitting project proposals should complete the project submission form by Wednesday, December 22nd. New York State Education Department announced additional virtual regional information meetings to discuss review of graduation measures in New York State. The comments collected during these meetings will be compiled by the Blue Ribbon Commission reviewing graduation standards and will present their findings for revision to the Board of Regents. We encourage you all to participate in your respective regional meetings and speak up in support of both your individual charters and our statewide charter school community to help improve what it means to attain a diploma in the state of New York. If you should require any assistance with accessing these meetings or learning more, please reach out to us. A link to the flyer and registration links for the remaining meetings is being added to the chat. Okay, now I'll turn it over to David, Susie, Corey, and Aaron for any updates that they would like to share. We'll start with you, Susie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Yamika. Happy holidays to everyone. Good to see you all. Just a couple of updates. We understand here in our finance team, they've asked me to just remind people that the NYSED portal that's open for the ESSER financial transparency reporting submission has to be fulfilled by December 31st. And I know the SUNY folks have been conducting office hours to assist schools with their submissions. So please reach out or attend those if you think those will be helpful. A little reminder, by January 3rd, the student application forms are due to the Institute through Epicenter, and the sooner you can get them to us, we would appreciate it, just so that folks can turn them around, get them back to you real quickly, and you'll be all in alignment for enrolling new kids next year. And then finally, the January 17th date for new charters. Your school marketing plans are in through Epicenter again. If you want to get them in earlier than that, we would be more than welcoming of that information. The sooner you get them to us, the more able we will be to review them, turn around, and get that checked off the list. So thanks a bunch.
Thank you. Hi, David. You have an update?
Hi, Omika. Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Actually, Stacy gave me a good segue in the chat. The incoming DOE Chancellor has said that they're open to remote education, and I just wanted to remind the group that SED has put together some professional learning opportunities around remote and hybrid learning through a grant we have through the federal government. So if you're interested, check out our Teaching in Remote and Hybrid Learning Environment grant. And I gave a link in the chat. We actually just awarded an RFP to create 60 plus learning modules around remote and hybrid learning. Could be for complete remote instruction or for use in a hybrid environment in your school. So take a look, it's free. And I think some of the professional learning opportunities are pretty good. To reiterate what Susie said, indeed, the New York State Ed Department ESSA Fiscal Transparency Report is due on the 31st. SED put out some guidance around the report, and I'll put a link in the chat. We're also participating in the office hours. So if you do have any questions, certainly speak to your Authorizer's finance team or the office hours, or you can always email Janet Klein on our team. And Janet, although the office hours are over, by the way, so you can email Janet or your Authorizer finance team. And I gave Janet's email in the chat. She's a great resource. As of today, there are still 264 outstanding reports. 63 Charter All-Stars completed it already. So if you have any questions, certainly reach out and we'd be happy to help. And I'll turn it over to the New York City DOE.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Here for Lori. We're just continuing along with our renewal and revision request processes. And there you go.
All right, great, thank you. We have focus topics presentations today. We are thrilled to feature two school reflections today, as we have heard, as we head toward the end of the calendar year. Before we get to the focus topics presentation, we're going to look to see if there are any questions in the Q&A. I'm going to turn it over to Anna.
So only the one that David referenced earlier, and just to put a finer point on it, because I think this is a combo question for Aaron, David, Susie, and you, Yomika. So in addition to the great learning resources that David referenced around remote learning, Stacy's question was about who has the ultimate authority to approve remote learning. So if the incoming New York City mayor and his chancellor are either open to or interested in a remote option, what would be the actual process and approval for that to be approved? And I don't know, Yomika, if you want to take a stab at this. This feels like Schoolhouse Rocks for education in 2021.
It's my understanding that ultimately the legislature would have to authorize full-time, as a full-time, non-COVID, non-pandemic related online education. But I will defer to Corey for her legalese and her legal brain. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I agree. I think the narrow issue, which I think a lot of you have been in, is that you can do virtual online education if you need to. We know of some charter schools that have had to do this during the pandemic. I know of one school in particular who, they shut down the whole school after Thanksgiving for a week. I think if that is, depending on how the new chancellor envisions what this not recovery, sorry, that's your other question, Stacy. It depends on how the new chancellor fashions it. I think, as everyone saw, NYC DOE was very restrictive with I think this is the right term, Erin, it's the homebound instruction. And who received homebound instruction this year was a very narrow set of students who were able to apply for that. So I took his comments to mean perhaps that he's willing to entertain a larger number of students whose parents are specifically citing COVID-19 as a reason why they don't want their kids to go to school for a while. And does that just fall under a more general, there is the ability, people have been doing virtual education as needed for the pandemic. So agree with Yomika that if it was some larger virtual education, there would need to be a change, but there might be a way for it just to happen. And I know there are several charters that also offered the virtual option. I think, not many are maybe doing it now, but there were some for sure in the beginning of the year that were offering that to families. And David put in the memo with the one sentence that allows it to all happen.
Yeah, I mean, we generally,
one sentence.
We generally tell school leaders that school should be in person when possible, but if there's a reason to close your building that's in the best educational interest of students, or other reasons set forth in that memo, the July 29th memo that I shared, instruction can be provided synchronously or asynchronously, and it still counts for state aid purposes. And I would always, when in doubt, reach out to your authorizer.
Good advice.
Terrific.
Okay,
well,
so do we have other?
Yeah, Corey and Aaron, I might bop it right back to you because Aaron, I saw that you responded to Stacy's question in the chat, but just for the purposes of folks who might not be seeing the chat, could you speak to charter's ability to access recovery services?
Yeah, so we will be sharing more information about what that looks like in the near future. Yep.
And I can just fill in for those who don't join. This has come up a lot on the special education office hours that the NYC DOE holds monthly. And so just so folks know, there are two kind of terms that are being used. One is compensatory services and one is recovery services. And so the recovery services is not compensatory services. And so this is a program that the DOE has, I believe, started now for students in the district who have IEPs as offering, depending on a set of circumstances and guidelines for students with disabilities to get services either after, before, or on Saturdays. And we have been waiting for, because the NYC DOE is the LEA for students with disabilities for charters, there's some component of that will also apply to charter schools. I don't think I'm misspeaking if I say, I think from the DOE's perspective, they see it as If you're a charter school that uses related services providers from the DOE, then recovery services will come through that. But if you are doing, internal work such as ICT, those programs, it's really about the charter school providing the recovery services. And recovery services kind of has lots of different definitions, and doesn't necessarily just mean students with disabilities. But for this purpose, I believe, Stacy, that's your context that you're talking about. And that's what the Advocates for Children is absolutely doing a webinar for parents to listen in on, and I'm sure charter parents will listen in on that as well.
Yomika, those are the questions I'm seeing in the chat, but folks in this wide open Zoom world, you can feel free to come off mute and ask a question yourself if there's one that hasn't been that hasn't been asked and answered.
While people get that extra moment, I'll just add, we do have the last NYC DOH DOE call of the year this Friday. I'll put in the chat if folks to register still. We are making it at 1:30. We're going to switch over specifically to have questions and issues that have been coming up with charters in private space. We know those of you in co-located space call the situation room, but if you're a charter school in private space, there might be some additional considerations. And so that call will also be happening. Erin, I don't know if you had any more NYC DOE city announcements you wanted to plug.
I do, just a couple. And to add on to the call this Friday, we are expecting some guidance related to holiday travel to come out, which I believe we hope to have in time for that call on Friday. We've been getting questions about holiday travel, so hopefully we'll have those answers for you then. An update on PEBT. Families that receive SNAP or have benefits already should already have their funds loaded on their cards. Families that are getting their card for the first time, maybe it's an incoming kindergartner, they weren't at your school last year, those benefits will arrive in January. And then there's a sample of students who, for some reason, their benefits are not flowing, and we're troubleshooting those as well. So if families have not received their benefits, we can support you in trying to figure out what's going on the ground. So just let us know, put in a ticket. Additionally, we are continuing to work with schools on their pop-ups for second doses. As soon as I'm done speaking, I'll pop some resources in the chat if families need other resources to find doses for their children. And then finally, the Big Apple Awards have launched. We're very, very excited. So if you have staff members on your team that you really want to shout out, please complete the recommendation form. It's one recommendation per DBN. And if you have questions, let us know. Those are my updates.
Great, thanks, Erin. And apologies if I went out of order earlier by hitting the questions before your updates. So wild times here at the end of the calendar year. Crazy webinar day. Yomika, turning it over to you to hear from our two guest schools.
Okay, great, thank you. So now we've no doubt right now that this year has been a year of challenge and change, and we've adapted the circumstances of reopening schools during this pandemic. We know that every school has had their stories of perseverance and heroic actions taken by staff. With that in mind, we're fortunate to have two schools today who are going to share with us how they are supporting their teams and finding innovative ways to address their staff and school culture. I'm going to turn it over to David Frank to introduce Amani Public Charter Schools.
Hi again. So it is my pleasure to introduce Amani and their school leader, Deborah Stern. Amani is a middle school that's been around for over a decade in Mount Vernon, which is in Westchester County, for those of you who don't know. And Mount Vernon really, they live the ideal of a community-based institution. Although their mission is to improve the academic skills necessary to succeed in high school programs, college, and careers of their students' choice, Amani, and I would say Deb in particular, live the ideal that students need enrichment in their lives. And so students at an Amani not only work on academic skills, but they're also part of the community. They're part of the arts community. They're part of their local Mount Vernon community. They get out into the world and they experience opportunities that students in Mount Vernon don't normally experience, whether that's going to cultural institutions in New York City, connecting with colleges, although it's a middle school. Amani just does a great job bringing the world to life for their students. And so it's with great pleasure that I introduce Deborah Stern, who is the architect of all of this. So Deborah, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, David. That was very large, and we're not doing anything that heroic. But I thought that what I would share with you all today is when I was approached about what are 2 or 3 ways that your school has supported and shown appreciation to your staff, I thought about it because there's easy things like we made phone calls to everybody and we made sure people had Wi-Fi and, we sent cookies and Rice Krispie treats and all those kind of things. But I thought instead to talk a little bit about the culture and how we build a culture that supports staff SEL, for want of a better word. So I just also want to mention that our principal is on the call as well, Mr. Scott, so he can jump in when it's clear that I'm saying things that are nonsense and we don't actually do. So he can share that with us. So you can go to the next slide, Michael. And I put music in. Everything I do in my life can be seen through the prism of musical theater. So Dream Girls, they sing the song about we are family, a giant tree. And you don't have to play it, Michael. It doesn't matter if I'm not exactly sure how it will work. But that, if you guys know that song, and I'm not going to sing for you, that's not my thing. It is more than you, it is more than me. We have to have a shared purpose where people are valued and appreciated. And one of the things that we want to do at Amani is create that family atmosphere where it is positive, inclusive, where everybody has a sense of belonging. And over these last years, we really try to think about how we can strengthen that sense of belonging. And one where in our community, all diverse background, life experiences, everybody feels they can contribute and thrive. And that's been more important than ever, to have everybody really feel that they have a voice. Now, one of the things about family, I always say this, that you have your chosen family and that's great, but sometimes your family gets on your nerves. And so we have to sort of name that and understand that, and then create opportunities for people to come together and have a voice. So you can advance to the next slide, Michael. So now more than ever, you have to really think of strategies to foster social connectedness, because even when we're in the building, we're 6 feet apart, we're wearing masks, you're not connected. So, and in the before times, which I call, March 13th, 2020 until September 2021, when we came back into the building, we were really looking at social isolation and deep uncertainty for everybody. And we talk about it a lot with students, but our teachers have the same experiences. So when we came back, I really wanted to find a way to create opportunities for social connectedness through the regular things that we did. So this is an example of a jam board that I created. We started a wellness committee. So I wanted people to come together to hear a lot of different voices about the things that people wanted to do to feel appreciated and to address staff culture. And so I created a jam board so that people can contribute to that in the meeting and out, and also share that out to the community so other people could contribute as well. And then you can see some of the things that people were saying that they'd be, interested in building up. And it's your regulars, relaxation rooms, more support, remodeling the teacher lounge. So these are all things that we want to think about, like how can we sort of look at the staff culture? And these are just suggestions from that wellness committee, things that popped up right away that I may or may not have thought about. And people kind of get bought into it because they're presenting the ideas to their peers. And at every meeting, I do give everybody, I bring face masks. There's a big jar of face masks on my desk. Nobody has really wanted to do face mask Mondays with me. If anybody would like to do that, come by my office Mondays and we'll sit around and do face mask Mondays for 15 minutes. You can go on to the next slide. One of the things that we did early on is we recognized that everybody was experiencing shared trauma. And so one of the things we did early on was wanted to make space for people to be able to express that. So, and then again, always pulling back from the community, we reached out to a social worker who had left Amani to continue raising her family, but she was still part of our community. So we brought her in early on during the pandemic to run groups with our staff. And then what we've continued to do is to have her in the building on Wednesdays from 1:15. She's actually there from 10 to 1. And then from 1:15 to 1:55, she has a more organized chat and chew. And it's just an opportunity for anybody to drop in and talk about the shared trauma. So I will walk around the building every Wednesday, and then I always will find time to drop in to talk with Mandy. But, you know, it's consistent. We have it there. People have engaged with it or not, but they know it's there. So that is an example of something specifically that we really try to do to give voice to the trauma that we're all experiencing. You can go on to the next slide, Michael. So one of the things that we thought was important, again, was to bring everybody together as a community. So we have professional development every Wednesday from 2 to 4. And it used to be very like once a month, we would all come together. But recently I said, you know what, we need to come together weekly. So again, getting back to everybody having a voice and what have you. So we instituted what we call PD15. And at the beginning of every professional development, we just give an opportunity for shout outs, give an opportunity for people to share, give a chance for everybody to come together in community. We've built in some traditions and small moments. So one of the things that we started to do was we always think about how do you honor people on their birthday? So, you know, I know people like, you know, gift cards, but part of our mission is reading. So one of the things I instituted was something called Birthday Book in a Bag. And I realized that I have enough books in my personal collection. So I figured that's about 60 books a year. I could do that. So I pulled 60 books off my bookshelf, brought them in, and we gave everybody a book in a bag on their birthday. And again, it's like creating these small traditions and small moments. And you wonder, does this really make a difference? Because I think people would prefer the gift card. But both we've done it twice now, the teachers have come up to me who've gotten the bag and said, thank you so much for that book. That's a really great book. This is really kind of interesting. And I don't really know the book that they chose for everybody. So, but it's great because again, it creates small moments, makes people feel seen. And I think that's really what's critical. So you can go to the next slide, Michael, to close. I'm watching the chat to see how I am with time, but I think I'm good. So basically, the bottom line is at Amani, and how do we show our staff appreciation, build out staff culture and retention to family, belonging, making connections, and resilience. I think that that's kind of what we do. That's what a family atmosphere means. And I hope that's what we've done for our staff to sort of address the questions that were asked of us today. So that's my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I don't know if Mr. Scott wants to jump in because I probably said 1,000,001 things that we do. And he's like, we don't do that.
No, you did a fantastic job. We do that and plus more.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess if anybody has any questions. Oh, Michael, I have 2 minutes left. I was trying to talk not too fast, so. Okay, thank you, Michael. Oh, back to you, Anna.
I love book in a bag. I think being gifted books that people have actually read is sometimes the best gift of all.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story because I buy a lot of books and they're just piling up. And so last night at a board meeting, I was saying about how we're doing these books in the bag. My husband happened to be at the board meeting because we were celebrating 10-year anniversary and he's one of the founders. And I said, well, you know, I figured 60 books. So I'll just buy 60 more books next year. I'm like, oh, wait, don't tell my husband. I buy all these books. He's like, why are you buying all these books? But I actually read them first. I try.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I don't know if I'm inserting myself here in the facilitation, Michael or Yomika, but I think the next step is to turn it over to Susie to introduce Dreama.
That's right.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna and Yomika. I am super happy to welcome Dr. Dreama Brown, the head of school at Children's Aid College Prep Charter School. Children's Age College Prep is a K-8 program with 2 campus locations in the Bronx. I luckily got to visit one this fall. Children's Aid is focused on each student's holistic development, including their cognitive and learning development, social and emotional skills, health and wellness. And in doing so, the team has always thought this about the place, and it was affirmed again post-pandemic when we were there this fall, prepares its students really well for college and career success. And so I'm excited to turn it over to Dr. Brown.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I would love to say that I am Dr. Brown, Susie, but I'm going to do a gentle correction and say that you're actually speaking into existence, something soon to be. I just have to finish that dissertation myself.
Go for it.
So thank you. I really appreciate the introduction, and it is really great to see so many familiar names and faces. I have to say, at some point, whoever's going to write the book about these last 2 years we've all lived through, they're certainly going to have to highlight the work of folks like this group in this room right now, because this has probably been a couple of the hardest years I've ever had as a school leader here in New York City, and I've been here doing this work since 2002. But I'm really glad to be able to share a little bit with you today about what we've been doing to get through this and to try to, live with some joy and to really share the best of ourselves with our scholars. So there probably won't be a lot new that I share, and Deborah did such a great job sharing so many strategies. So I'm going to focus on what we do, what we have been doing, and what we continue to do at Children's Aid College Prep, both in terms of our culture and creating and maintaining a culture that helps us retain staff, but also some very technical moves we've made to try to retain staff as an independent charter school here in our little corner of the South Bronx, in the face of some of our, the work of our colleagues in larger networks. So this really is a conversation, and love to hear, in the chat or wherever you'd like to share it with us, other ideas. I have a lot of, resources to share, just because I like to share. People share these things with me, and I'm going to share them with you. So we could go to the next slide. All right. So if you are interested in knowing more about our school, we're at cacpcs.org. As I mentioned, we serve approximately 600 students in the South Bronx, grades K through 8. Just a little bit about our structure, because that may help some of these strategies make sense. I am the head of school of Children's Aid College Prep Charter School, and I supervise an elementary principal and a middle school principal. Our school, this K-8 school, one school on one charter, but we're located in 2 different physical locations. Our elementary school is in private space built by Children's Aid, and our middle school is co-located in DOE space. And so with that all said, what became really clear to us as soon as things shut down was that we were all going to be in this sort of moment of, shared uncertainty and collective trauma. And so from a culture perspective, our focus was really trying to turn some of those trauma-informed practices that we have been studying as a school community, as a group of educators, really sort of focus those on ourselves first, to make sure we were in a good position to then be able to support our scholars who were also going through, our scholars and their families who are also going through some very difficult times. So, from that perspective, we really tried to think about trauma-informed work from sort of 2 perspectives, the affective and the professional. As you all know, we have probably very similar staffs. You have folks who are more veteran, more senior, and younger folks, and isolation was an issue on both ends of those spectrums. You had young folks with young families, all in the mix, and all with very different needs. And so we realized pretty early on that as two principals and a head of school, that we were going to really have to concentrate on taking care of the staff. And so I put in the chat the links that are also here so that you have these resources. But we began to early on incorporate some of the tools and the practices shared by AIR in our leadership and our supervision of the staff. And so, what do I mean by that? So one, we had to come to understand, and we have continued to understand how the stress and trauma of the times is affecting our staff. And that causes us to make different moves as leaders and managers. And so understanding how it shows up physically, cognitively, et cetera, in adults has been really helpful for us to really focus our efforts on building resilience and helping staff get through this in a way where they're feeling some energy and some joy in the midst of a lot of uncertainty and questions. And so what do we do? So a couple of quick examples. So a sense of control, for example, is really important for people to have a little sense of control when everything feels like it's constantly out of their control. And so the principals and I constantly shared the ugly truths with folks. We were clear from the beginning, we were not going to be able to protect people from getting COVID, whether we were virtual or in person. But what we could do is we could be clear about what we know about infection rates and how it's passed and what we can do to keep everyone safe. And so that allowed people to make the decisions they needed to make to keep themselves safe. And the same came to fore with the recent staff vaccination requirements. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical doctor. And so all I can do is share information with folks and let them know I respect their decisions, but they have to make a decision. They have to take control. And outside of that, I mean, I think a lot of the examples that Deborah shared around social support and healthy coping strategies and positive thinking, those were other places where we really focused our time. And a lot of our staff events and trainings and just downtime activities had to do with that. And so that has continued into the current. So the culture, I think, has been probably our greatest retention strategy because they know we care. And then here on the right side of the slide, some of the more technical moves we made in terms of retention. And for us, we really kind of kept three things in mind: compensation, workload relief, and acknowledging and appreciating staff. And so I think we all, a lot of these things, staff wellness days and school swag and happy hours and, all of those things. But what I want to focus on is just how we acknowledge the fact that both through remote learning into our hybrid and now back in person, that staff have been required to learn a lot of new things pretty quickly, and that takes extra time. So whether it was increasing salaries, using some of the federal dollars for additional stipends, we've had to say to staff, learning recovery is going to take more time. It means additional small group lesson plans. It means some longer days, even than we were already working. So we're going to compensate you for that. But in the reverse, we also asked ourselves, what can we take off people's plates? And so with that in mind, my role in support of the principals, for example, is to take on a lot of the following the health guidance and following up on staff vaccination, so they can just focus on supporting the teachers in the classroom. And that's been a support to them. And they similarly find other ways to relieve the workload for the staff. Some creative hiring in staff shortages, and really being creative about where we were placing some of the youth workers that work with us as children's aid staff. They served as wonderful, energetic substitutes when we couldn't get them. So, and so their energy was really helpful to the staff. So those are the ideas I wanted to share with you from a culture perspective as a retention strategy, and then some of the more technical things we did. And I appreciate the time and just want to wish everyone a good close to the year.
All right, great, thank you. Just hold for a minute, maybe for some questions. Anybody have questions they want to drop in the chat or unmute themselves?
I have one only because I've heard it from lots of other leaders in sort of conversations and just sort of trying to grapple with this. When you say that you used federal funds to give additional resources to staff, how did you message that? Because it's not forever, right? Like what?
Yeah, I mean, I messaged it just, just as I indicated, which is the same way the shutdown was one moment in time that we hadn't ever experienced before collectively. We're in another moment in time where we're now trying to, recover learning after remote learning and hybrid learning. And so that means we're going to have to, do some things, spend some time learning how to do some things, really being close with the kids to really understand what's going on. And for right now, we have some resources to actually pay us for that time. Because the reality is we're going to have to put the time in. I had to say this to my board. There's not going to be a shortcut to the kind of learning recovery that has to occur. We just have to put the time in with the kids. And if anyone else knows what pill it is or what shot it is that we give the kids to recover from that, let me know. But outside of that, it's just going to take time. And we have resources now to help with that.
All right, great, thank you. Thank you very much to Gemma and Deborah for your presentations. I think we're wrapped today. I think we're ready to close. Thank you all for joining us. We're gonna, as we always do, we will post today's recording in the Resource Center on our website. I'll say that again in advance of the emails that I will get. It's on in our Resource Center on our website. If you have suggestions for future focused topics or would like to hear from other schools on how they are addressing certain issues or would like to have your school present during our monthly webinars, please let us know. Our monthly webinars are made possible through contributions from viewers like you know, contribution and commitment of our member schools. And we really appreciate the ability to host those forums for the full New York State Charter School community. If you are not a member of the association, we encourage you to join today by emailing us, membership@nycharters.net. We wish you all happy holidays and we will see you next year.